Well, hello everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Transfer Talk podcast. My name is Pete Graves.
One Pete is all it takes. Falling in love with world possibilities. Pete Graves is all we need. One Pete is all it takes. Falling in love with world possibilities. Pete Graves is all we need. Hello, Peter.
Yes, that is a belter. Hello, Dharmesh.
It is.
How are you?
And I did promise that I would use listeners' ideas. So Max Harwood, thank you very much indeed. He actually sent all the lyrics on a DM on my Instagram. And I said, that's fantastic. I had to practice it a little bit, because when I was practicing it yesterday for hours, I was getting the possibilities and the falling in love with were the wrong way round. But I think I got it.
You did really well. And Max, thank you to you for sending it in. That was delivered brilliantly, as always, by the brilliant Dharmesh. How are you, Dharms? All right, son?
Really good. Really, really good. Was at an event yesterday at Lord's. Nice. My cousin does this charity event every year. It was in the Long Room. I don't know whether you've been in the Long Room before.
I have. Brilliant.
Oh, my goodness. Just so good. But you could tell the people who were cricket
mad. Was Kumar
mad.
Sangakkara there?
No. It was Darren Gough. So it was he did like a Q&A. It was very funny. But you could tell the cricket fans in the crowd and the non-cricket fans, because the cricket fans came in and they were just like, oh my God, like speechless. I'm in the Long Room. Whereas the non-cricket fans were like, oh, you can see the pitch from here.
It's brilliant. It's a fantastic room. I've been in there a number of times and hosted events in there as well. It's absolutely brilliant, steeped in history, much like ourselves. Sam Tighe's also with us today. Sam, how are you, buddy?
Very good, mate. Thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, all good, mate. I'm in Spain. I'm having a great time, largely thanks to the Lionesses. I mean, they've had us dangling on a string, haven't they? Sweden. I watched the Swedish game in a bar full of Sweden fans, round full of Sweden fans. Obviously, they were all celebrating and they were doing like the Viking clap and stuff like that when they were 2-0 up. And then I think like me, Steph, and the kids, we were like the only English people in there. And so we sort of celebrated a bit, went 2-1, 2-2, and then the penalties. Listen, when England scored the winning penalty, we legged it. I mean, the Swedish people were lovely with us, to be fair, but we thought we were just going to get out of here. You don't want them to rub their noses in it. And then last night again, Italy, I mean, it looked over. And goodness me, Adjiman comes on. What a player. She is brilliant, isn't she? Held the ball up well. What a forward. Scored the equaliser. And then the drama with Chloe Kelly in the penalty. I've loved it, guys. Loved the drama. Did you watch it, Sam?
Yes. Never in doubt for me. Even at 93, 94, 95, I was absolutely 100% certain that we were going to score. Like there's no possible way that we could get through that game and not score a goal. It was hardly a vintage performance, but the pressure that we managed to put the Italians under the entire time, I was like, they're going to yield at some point. It's going to go in. And of course, it was Adjiman. And then, we've just got this habit, haven't we, of doing things very, 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 very late, which is playing with us all. It is keeping us all on tenterhooks, but it's a good bit of summer excitement.
It is. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat. I've got to say two things. First of all, they haven't actually. It doesn't feel like they've peaked yet. The Lionesses, they've just like found, or they always seem to find a way to get through. It kind of reminds me, and I hope it's not going to have the same result, of England in the Euros, England's men in the Euros last year, when they weren't that convincing all the way through. Then suddenly they're in the final, and then they end up playing Spain, and Spain, who were the best team throughout the tournament, win. I'm hoping that trend will be bucked when the final comes along. The second thing I will say is this is giving me really late nights now, these matches, because I watch Love Island. Judge me, I don't care. And I have to record it and then I have to watch it after, because I don't want to drag it on and have to watch 2 episodes the following day or whatever. Just an insight into my life here. And so once the football finishes, it's Love Island for the next 45 minutes. You can whiz through the adverts, I guess, which is one advantage, but ends up being a really late night, Peter.
Wow. This is huge. Forget transfer talk. This is a huge development. You watch the football, then you sit and watch Love Island.
Yeah.
Dharmesh, this is a whole side to you. I don't think I needed to know.
Man of the people, mate.
Do you watch Love Island, Sam?
Not anymore. No,
Oh.
no. I know I did my 2-3 years with it, but as with many formats, you get a little bit jaded with it, and I've not managed to switch it on
You see,
just yet.
Pete, I joined it late. See, I think I'm quite fashionable now because no one else is watching it. But I am. And I don't think I watched it when everyone else was.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, you know what, Doms? Yeah, very fashionable, mate. You are.
Yeah.
You are sitting
Thanks.
watching your Love Island after the Lionesses. It doesn't get much more fashionable than that. Right, listen, let's move on to the transfers before we get any more dark secrets from Dharmesh's
Gosh, beautiful.
Dharmesh's lifestyle. And listen, there was a few dark secrets shared on here last week, wasn't there? When we were all going Ekitike, Isak, it was all sort of kicking off. I was losing a lot of sleep. I wouldn't say I've necessarily recovered. There was this tug of war, wasn't there, between Newcastle and Liverpool, with Isak right in the middle of it all, and Ekitike, where was he going to go? And Newcastle having a bid rejected. And what we know now is that it's going to be one of the biggest deals of the summer. In fact, as you're listening to this podcast, it may well have been announced. Hugo Ekitike going to Liverpool. Medical is all scheduled, shouldn't be a problem ahead of a £79 million move from Eintracht Frankfurt. What a roller coaster it was. Okay, Sam, I'll start with you this week. Slightly go against the usual. I mean, you said last week you thought Isak would end up going to Liverpool.
Yeah.
And I basically didn't sleep for that night with your words echoing through my mind. It looks as though it's Ekitike. Hopefully, I say this from a Newcastle perspective, that puts an end to the Isak interest. But Ekitike, you watch a lot of European football. Is this a risk? £79 million?
Yeah. First of all, I was guessing last week. So whenever I tell you guys that I'm guessing, please don't lose sleep over my guesses. It's no way to live. Dharmesh is already up very, very late as it stands with his many responsibilities, keeping in touch with popular culture.
Exactly.
But look, it's £69 million rising to possibly £79 million. Guys, it was never going to come any cheaper than this. You know, we've talked about it all summer, but the market, the price ranges, they've been set. And Eintracht Frankfurt are the masters of extracting top value, particularly out of striker deals. And they would have been pointing to Cunha and to Mbuemo and saying, well, these guys at age 26 cost this much money. Ekitike is just 23 years of age. He's going to be even more money. So we can't be too surprised at the rough price range of this deal. It was always going to be at least this. And of course, there's always risk in taking a young player for a big fee and saying, here's a new league, here's a new set of expectations, go and play in front of Anfield and, you know, try and impress a very, very knowledgeable and storied crowd. So, yes, of course, there's risk, but I love the player. I've talked about him throughout the summer. I've talked about how he scored one of my favourite goals from last season against Tottenham, the way he dribbled towards from the middle third, picked it up, cut inside, and just stroked it into the far corner. It's absolutely beautiful technique. I think he profiles really well for the Liverpool forward role, the way he can sort of drop away from the attacking role and move to the left, pick up the ball and start dribbling. Liverpool's forward needs to be creative because Mohamed Salah will always be the number one goal output in this team. So Liverpool will never need their number 9 to be the chief goal scorer because they already have that. They need a guy at number 9 who can score 20 goals, but also provide 10 or 15 assists, link play and move the ball around and get Salah into those positions. And I think they found the player that can do that.
Fair enough. Good assessment. Darms, I mean, this one's going to happen. Liverpool fans rightfully quite excited about it, although a lot of the suggestion was that Isak was the number 1 choice.
Just something that happened over the weekend, though. I mean, you'll be fully aware of this with the Isak situation, the Celtic game, and what Eddie Howe said after, which raised a few eyebrows as well. Look, he was all ready to play. Suddenly, he's not in the squad. He's not going to be in the crowd. So he's sent home because clearly Alexander Isak's head was turned by everything that had happened in the previous 2 weeks or so. Newcastle United now find themselves in a position where, well, they're going to have to talk to Isak and say, look, the season's, not long from starting. We need you. We need your head right. We need your form as it was last season, if not better, because you're effectively staying at the club. So I just don't know. I mean, you'd probably be better placed to say to comment on this than me, Pete. But where it leaves Newcastle moving forward, not only in this transfer window, but in forthcoming transfer windows as well, because it's clear that Ekitike was a number one target for them because they bid £70 million for him, which was rejected. He ends up going to Liverpool, the same Liverpool who were trying to get Alexander Isak. And now Newcastle United haven't got Ekitike, and they've got a player in Alexander Isak who no doubt is an unbelievable footballer, but whose head's been turned. And it was felt that his head wasn't right to be playing in that pre-season friendly. So it's not ideal at the moment for Newcastle United. So a little bit of work to be done, I think, behind the scenes, not least as well as trying to bring in players as well at the same time.
Yeah, I think that Eddie Howe's comments after the game did startle Newcastle fans in that he's spoken very openly about his frustrations about the transfer window and how they've tried to get players in and they've fallen short. There was a report floating around yesterday that Isak wants wages in around 300 grand a week to stay at the club and sign a new deal. Now, I don't know whether that's true. I'm just going to talk about if it is. Now, the problem is Newcastle have no problem paying those wages. Newcastle can pay those wages tomorrow. They can go and give him 300. Hey, you know what? Have 400 grand a week. That's not a problem. The problem is they're not allowed. They're not allowed. Only certain clubs are allowed. It's absolutely nonsensical.
Here we go.
So Newcastle could tie him down to long deal, 300 grand a week, give him the number 9. And you know what? They could have outbid Liverpool for Ekitike, but they're not allowed. And it's just so frustrating. And I can't go too deep into the whys and whens of PSR, and we know that it's changing soon. But it is immensely frustrating. We talked about it last week. If you support a Newcastle, an Aston Villa, any of those clubs that are in the sort of nearly men, if you like, the ones that can't quite reach the top 6, the elite, who can seemingly pay what they want and have sponsorship deals off the scale. I've spoken about this before, the Newcastle front of shirt sponsor. They could have, if they wanted to, they could have got Saudi Airlines to offer £1 billion a year sponsorship deal, but they weren't allowed. So it's very, these are the rules and you got to stick to them, but I can see the frustrations, and Eddie Howe must be hugely frustrated because if you look down the list of their targets that they've gone for and missed out on, and I know we're going to talk about Johan Wissa, but you look down, Ekitike got close, went to Liverpool. João Pedro got close, went to Chelsea. James Trafford, goalkeeper, got close. Now looks like he might end up going to City. And someone said yesterday online, I did chuckle to myself, obviously we've gone in for Johan Wissa. And someone said, bid rejected, just waiting for the news that he's going to sign for Spurs. And it's just, it just almost see it happen. Every single player Newcastle go for, they have the amount that they can bid, and then seemingly they can't go any higher, and they end up signing for someone else. I've missed a few off, actually. There's been others in this window that Newcastle have gone in for and missed out on. Someone posted a list, and there's about 8 players that they've gone in for and missed out on to other teams at the top end of the financial table, shall we say. So it is hugely frustrating. Sam, what do you think of Isak? You made the bold claim that you think he'll end up leaving. Do you still think Newcastle fans should be worried?
That.
Because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I am.
Oh, I mean, probably not this summer, at least. So hopefully that's a year's peace on that, although I appreciate that this subject does tend to crop up every other week. Even when the transfer window isn't open, it crops up every other week, which is why most of Newcastle hasn't slept properly for about 12 months. So hopefully it's a year of, okay, Isak's in the building and we know what we're going to get. We've got a Champions League campaign to look forward to. And hopefully that Champions League revenue can boost the coffers. And so within the rules, you can offer Isak what he wants to stick around. And you're going to come to that decision point at some point, Pete, because you are in possession of a top 3 striker in world football. they cost money. They cost a hell of a lot of money per week to keep around. You compare Isak's wages to the guys that he will be contesting this crown for top striker. Look at Haaland's wages, for example. It'll be dwarfed, and Isak will be pointing to that and going, "That's not my market value." And Newcastle will be going, "We know. We'd love to pay more. We can't." Something has to change at some point. I guess from your perspective, all you can do is perform as well as you possibly can this season and earn as much money as possible from the Champions League in order to boost that revenue, in order to be able to spend some money. I know it's a horrible system, but it is what it is.
Dharmesh, just taking it back to Liverpool, their spending now, it's going to go up towards £300 million this summer. That's 75 more million roughly than the next biggest spenders so far in Chelsea. More than Manchester City and Arsenal combined, by the way. How have Liverpool been able to afford so much? They've already bought Florian Wirtz in, and others as well. I did say last week it's one of the greatest windows I've seen in transfers history for me. How do they keep spending? And a lot of people online saying, "Oh, poor old Liverpool can't compete with the spending." Well, because that has been the rhetoric in previous windows. But why have they all of a sudden been able to just splurge all this cash?
I think this is a question that is coming from rival fans. How are Liverpool spending all this money? Why are they allowed to spend all this money? First and foremost, rival fans won't want to hear it, but they are an unbelievably, fantastically run football club. Number one, you go back to last summer, they bought Federico Chiesa for around £12 million. That clearly hasn't worked. It looks like he's going to be on his way out, but they actually recouped around £40 million. Carvalho went, Bobby Clark went, Sepp Vandenberg went. And then if you look at this summer, they've sold the likes of Kelleher and Jarrell Quansah for a combined 50 odd million pounds. They even managed to get 10 million pounds for Trent Alexander-Arnold for a month to Real Madrid.
That was cheap.
So add to that the revenue that they're generating, because that's what it boils down to as well, is incredible. Global revenue. And the Premier League broadcast money that they'll get, because they're going to be more often than not featured live on TV most weeks, and the Champions League revenue that they got last season, albeit they only got to the last 16, but qualifying for it again is going to bring them even more money. Yes, we know they've spent almost £300 million, but the way PSR works is slightly different. So £300 million on all of these players doesn't mean £300 million goes out of their accounts in this financial year. But what it does mean that the players that they've sold, the likes of Quansah and Kelleher, that full value goes into their accounts for this financial year. And if they end up selling the likes of, say, for example, Darwin Núñez and Harvey Elliott, potentially what you're looking at another 80 to 100 million pounds potentially coming in then, when you're looking at it in that way, and say they recoup, I'm just, for argument's sake, in this transfer window, say they recoup about 140 million. That 140 million goes into the accounts for this financial year. But what goes out of the books for the 300 million pounds that they will have spent is probably 20 to 25% of that total, because those fees will be amortized over the length of the contract of the players that they've bought. So, for example, if you sell a player for 40 million pounds, for argument's sake, there's an argument that you could go into the market and buy £100 million player, because you might only be spending 20 to 25 million pounds while you're getting that 40 million pounds. So you're almost making a profit in that financial year. Of course, they'll always have an eye on future financial years and how they're going to recoup the money and how much they'll be able to spend and their revenue streams. But Liverpool have been fantastic at it, because one thing that they do better than any other club is the way they sell. They always seem to make players better and bring in fees that are much, much higher than what they bought them for. There are some years, I was looking at their transfer records in the last 6 or 7 years, and in about 2 of those seasons, they actually made a net profit on transfers, which you cannot say about most clubs. So that's why they are in this position where they can go out and say, yeah, we can spend £300 million, and it's actually going to be well within all of our constraints that we've got with financial fair play and PSR. And that's exactly what they've been able to do.
You know what, you listen to Dom's there talking about how you spread the payments. It always reminds me of how, like, the day I found out on Football Manager that you could kind of cheat, that you could kind of buy someone for loads of money and spread it over years. And like, you know, when you had a transfer budget of like 12 million, you're like, oh, I'm going to do that. Oh, actually, I can spend 60 million and spread it over 7 years. The day I found that out was like the best day ever.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to go and buy Neymar from Santos. And spread it over 8 years. I can afford him, you know. It was a great day, great day.
I will say this, Pete. I used to enact a cheat in Football Manager as well, and I once got completely and utterly found out. I don't know if you guys know, but on Football Manager, they've never been able to have the German national team. There's no license for it. None of the players are real.
I remember.
And so I bought a German player, and I promised him a contract that would go up significantly on his weekly wages as soon as he got one cap for his national team, knowing it was impossible for him to be called up. He changed nationalities to Sudanese, got a cap for Sudan, and I went bankrupt. Always be careful.
Yeah. Pete, just very quickly, just going back to what you were saying. I know we're going back to Newcastle here just very briefly, but I know you're worried that the Wissa deal might not happen, but I mean, all the noises would suggest that Newcastle are going to step up that interest. They've had that bid rejected already. Wissa has left the training camp in Portugal with Brentford. He's now back in the UK. He's held talks with Brentford amid all of this interest, not only from Newcastle, but from Tottenham Hotspur, and historically, and now with Nottingham Forest as well. But I mean, he's 28 now. He's got a year left on his contract with a year option. And so there's a real balancing act for both the player and the club. The club want to tie him down to a new contract, maybe, whereas he is probably thinking, am I going to get an opportunity like this again? Hence why I think Newcastle United might be encouraged that Wissa would probably want to go there. What do you think? You're still nervous, aren't you?
Well, I share most Newcastle United fans' opinions on this, that until he's pictured in a black and white shirt holding the Newcastle United scarf at St James's Park, I'm not taking anything for granted, really. The window, yesterday, it felt like a good day. It felt all of a sudden there was some links started to come out, and you know, from various different sources. And I thought, things are obviously starting to move. Eddie's been frustrated in his failed attempts, but a lot of new names sort of started floating around yesterday. There was a bit of talk that could be back in for Trafford, even though we know that Manchester City are at the table there as well. Wissa obviously is developing quite quickly. There was talk of Christopher Nkunku from Chelsea. There was talk of Moani as well, and others. So yeah, I think Newcastle fans have to just relax and we know that there's money there to spend. We know that there's targets out there. We know that Eddie and the recruitment team will have a list of targets, and I think until the transfer window closes, Newcastle fans are going to have to be a bit patient. But I mean, if you're going to sum up Newcastle's window so far, you know, much like Aston Villa's, Sam, it's frustrating, I think is the word you'd use.
I think you'd sum Villa's up with the word, are we under a transfer ban and we don't know about it? What? Can anyone do anything? Kind of feels like we're on an unofficial transfer ban right now. Bit like Newcastle last summer.
Right, let's just move on, guys, because there's lots going on at the moment. Manchester United, why don't we talk about them for a second? A big summer of change at the club continues, and Marcus Rashford's move to Barcelona expected to be announced today. I mean, I honestly, when go all the way back to, I think it was Henry Winter's interview, was it? When around that time, and the word coming out that Rashford wanted to go to Barcelona, I honestly laughed. I think I laughed out loud when I saw that. I just thought, of course he wants to go to Barcelona. I remember the comments online saying, well, yeah, I'd quite like to go to Barcelona as well. You know, like from the, you know, Big Jeff who works in the pie shop. But now it's actually happening. Absolutely amazing. Sam, you've got a Rashford shirt in a frame behind your head there.
I do.
So I'll start with you before I get to the latest on the deal. Rashford, the new camp, Barcelona, is it going to work?
Oh yeah, it's really exciting, isn't it? I mean, great for him to have a bit of a reset and go and play at Barca. And of course, he wants to go and play for Barca. I think he set his heart on Barca in January, to be honest with you. But they couldn't produce a deal. They weren't going to be able to pay his salary, and so Villa came through and provided a bit of a short-term option. But clearly, even if Villa had qualified for the Champions League and could afford the £40 million fee, I'm sure that Rashford would have tried to hold out for Barca this summer because he seems like he's had his heart set on it for a little while. And for him, as good as playing with Bruno Fernandes and Ollie Watkins is, I mean, he gets to go and play with Lamine Yamal and Rafinha and Pedri, like some of the very best footballers on this planet. So this is a great opportunity for him. And he showed real sharpness and fitness at his time at Villa. I think he's taken good care of himself in 2025, and I hope that he can adapt to Barca's pressing game because he hasn't been asked to press like they press for a long time. So it's very intriguing to watch. But I think it's a lovely move for him, honestly.
It can only be good for England and stuff as well. And I agree with you. I think hopefully he can reinvent himself there. But Dharmesh, it's not quite straightforward, this one, is it? We know Barcelona have had their own sort of financial issues. Where are we with this one?
That's an understatement, isn't it? We seem to be talking about Barcelona and whether they can actually sign players, even though they've signed players. Can they play them? Can they register them? Just on the deal itself, it's a loan with an option to buy. Now, Barcelona will cover the wages of Marcus Rashford. Also, there is the option to buy him at the end of the season for £26 million. Now, I know the option price was £40 million with Aston Villa. I'm not entirely 100% sure how the wages were apportioned, but if Manchester United aren't paying the wages for Marcus Rashford, I've worked out there could be a 15 to 17 million pound saving for them on that. So if they were to end up selling him to Barcelona for 26 million pounds, then you're looking at a 40 to 42, 43 million pound deal in total. Now that's what it is in principle. In reality, Barcelona at the moment are going to find it difficult to actually register Marcus Rashford. That's because they've spent more on signings and wages than they have generated revenue. So to be able to register players, they are going to have to make sales again. They're going to have to maybe cut wages again. And they've got until the end of August to be able to do just that. But the feeling coming out of Barcelona is that there is a degree of confidence that there shouldn't be any issues with this and that Marcus Rashford will be registered and will be fine to play for Barcelona. We know they've got a little bit of history with this, the Daniel Olmo saga previously in another transfer window. How long did it take for them to register him? But he ended up playing for Barcelona, as we know. I think Barcelona are confident that the same thing will happen with Rashford. But look, we knew that when Barcelona came in, even though he was desperate to go and they wanted to sign him, it was going to be easier said than done. Let's see if they can maneuver, shall we say, their finances in such a way that he can be registered.
The scramble for Barcelona to register players is never pleasant to watch, and it's literally players' careers on the line, and it's almost not fair that they play with people like this. But one thing working in Rashford's favour here already is that Barcelona have managed to get Ansu Fati out on loan to Monaco nice and early in the window. He is on a wage comparable to what Rashford is reported to be on. Now, exactly how much of that is covered by Monaco, I don't know, but even if it was half, and I think it might be in that area, 125 grand a week off the bill immediately. You're halfway to Rashford here. So Barca have already made a couple of moves here, which are positive towards the idea of registering Rashford. They're probably going to have to make a few more in order to get him and Joan Garcia, their new goalkeeper, registered. They've got 3 senior goalkeepers. They've probably got too many midfielders. They'll have to make a move somewhere. But I'm encouraged by the early signs. I am.
He never would have thought this was going to happen, would he, when he signed that new deal at Old Trafford, shortly after that brilliant season. But, like you said, right in the top, Sam, an opportunity for him to go out to Spain and really reinvent himself at one of the biggest clubs in the world. And from a Manchester United perspective, Doms, they've already signed I guess, the ideal replacement in Bryan Mbuemo, and that's all been done. £71 million. Some suggestion, again, as football fans like to talk, that they've maybe overpaid a bit there, but I mean, Sam's nodding his head. Sam, you clearly are one of those people. What are you thinking?
I think this is a bit of an overpay. Yeah.
How much?
£15 million,
Okay.
something like that. He's got a year left on his deal, and they spent
Plus a year.
What, an option?
Yeah.
Was it a club option or a player option?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it applies to Wissa as well. Like, I don't know the exact dynamic of those, but yeah, it just doesn't look quite right. I mean, it's on the very top end of the bracket that we keep mentioning, with all these Premier League forwards and wingers moving around. United have ended up towards the top end of that bracket on Cunha and Mbuemo for players who are in their mid-20s, and you've got really young 20s, like 21, 22-year-olds and 20-year-olds moving for like 50. So that's why I kind of put him at about a £15 million overpay. That the potential contract situation and just the age compared to like Madueke and Gittins and all those guys. There's no doubt that Mbuemo's a really good player, but he and Cunha were two of the three biggest XG overperformers last season. They overperformed in front of goal at a rate that Messi and Ronaldo would struggle to over the course of a campaign. Or over a course of a career. So something might give in that area. And you've got to be wary of non-penalty goals against goals scored as well. Mbuemo he scored 5 penalties. I don't think he's going to be allowed to have penalties if Bruno Fernandes is on the pitch. So when people keep pointing to him and going, well, he scored 20 goals, I'm like, sure. But at United, that would have been 15. So already you're 25% down in your tally. So that's why I think it's ended up probably a little bit too inflated. Just my honest thoughts.
One thing I would say is that there was talk that the goalposts were being moved constantly with Bryan Mbuemo. But one thing that United were impressed by was the fact that he only wanted to go to Man United. We do know that Tottenham and Newcastle were interested. They could offer Champions League football. Yes, we can talk about potential wages that were on offer, but I think United were really encouraged by the fact that Mbuemo's desire from the moment that United came in was only to join Man United. And now, when I mentioned goalposts being moved, I mean, there's been, denials on all sides, I think, with regard to how this fee, how they came to this fee. But there was at one point, I heard one source telling me that, Brentford might have wanted to go as high as £77 million, and they might have wanted to get 70 million guaranteed. What United will have done here, if you look at the Cunha deal, it was £62.5 million paid in 3 instalments. So you're looking at around £20 million per instalment. Now, what United have done, which we can't often talk about, is sometimes clubs will find it more beneficial to actually pay a bit more money in return for more favourable payment terms, simply because of how the profit and sustainability rules are set. Now, this £65 million that is guaranteed to Brentford is actually going to be paid over 4 instalments. So if you imagine that there were equal instalments, you're looking at £16 million per instalment that Manchester United would have to pay Brentford. That compared to, for example, would they rather do that or pay £5 million less over 3 instalments? You got to weigh it up. That's how clubs are thinking now with these PSR and these financial fair play rules. So Manchester United will feel that they've got a good deal. Brentford will feel that they've got a good deal. Whatever happens, Manchester United desperately wanted to bring in Bryan Mbuemo. They've got him.
Yeah. Deal done. What about the striker search? I mean, there was talk that they were in for Ekitike. He's going to Liverpool. From the ones that are left, Sam, there's been talk. Benjamin Sesko, Nicholas Jackson's been mentioned. Ollie Watkins. Apologies to bring him into it, but do you think that Manchester United will push for a striker? I saw someone suggesting just play Cunha as the 9. What are your thoughts? I mean, they've got a couple there, haven't they, as well already? Young players who can play there.
Yeah, I mean, don't buy Cunha for £62.5 million and then just shove him up front when he's barely played there in the last year and has clearly excelled as a kind of floating 10, which United literally used 2 of. So I'm pleased to see that they're up for a 9. I wondered if they'd leave it and think with the support of Mbuemo and Cunha and Bruno Fernandes and Amad Diallo fit again, with all those 4 scoring goals, would the burden on the striker become a little less, and would they thrive as a result? It looks like they're not willing to take that risk, and it looks like they are at least going to try. I'll ask the question on a few of these players. So Šeško, expensive, young, from abroad. Ultimately, I have no issue with that in a vacuum, but the last couple that United have tried really haven't worked out, and I think they should probably look at something a little bit safer. So your low-risk, low-cost option here is probably Ollie Watkins, isn't he? But of course, he's significantly older. He's 7 years older than Šeško and 5 years older than Nicholas Jackson. So it's no long-term solution. That can be okay if you're just trying to, get a shot in the arm, which is seemingly what they're doing here with Mbuemo and Cunha. But Nicholas Jackson, I mean, Dharmesh, you may correct me, the price I've seen reported in terms of Chelsea's asking price, somewhere between 80 and 100 million.
Yeah,
So,
we're always talking about how the market is set. So Chelsea are looking at Ekitike. Well, if he's £69 million basic plus £10 million in add-ons, well, so is Nicholas Jackson. And you know what? Chelsea will have every right to say that, because Nicholas Jackson has got Premier League experience. He's scored goals in the Premier League. Ekitike hasn't. So why shouldn't Chelsea value the player in that way? What I would say, the priority for Manchester United right now, once they got the Mbuemo deal done, is sales. They need to get sales to be able to fund further investment in this transfer window.
Any sales close, finally, Doms?
Well, I mean, Rashford one is that's one down of the 5. The other 4 we're talking about: Alejandro Garnacho, Jadon Sancho, Tyrell Malacia, and Anthony. There's interest in all of them. Juventus still pursuing a deal for Jadon Sancho, but rather like Manchester United's pursuit of a striker, Juventus are in that position where now that they've effectively signed Francisco Conceição, to bring in someone like Sancho, they would have to make sales. That they're working on sales of Timothy Weah to Marseille, and Nico Gonzalez as well is of interest to Atletico Madrid, I think. So they're trying to make these sales to be able to get this Sancho deal done. I don't think with regard to Sancho, the biggest issue is going to be the transfer fee, because I think they'll be able to negotiate that with United. Simply because if you look at the Rashford option price, United have come down to £26 million. I think they were asking £25 million of Chelsea when they had an obligation to buy. It probably won't go as high as that if Juventus are coming in for someone like Sancho, because it feels like United have made the decision behind the scenes. If we take the hit on certain players, we're just going to have to do it, because there's no way for us to move forward unless we have got these players out and I've got the players that I want in the club. So Sancho and Juventus, that one is live. We do know Real Betis still want Anthony. There is other interest in him from a number of other clubs, but he wants to go to Betis. Of course, after last season's performance, Betis are desperate to sign him. Again, the finances could prove to be an issue. Is it going to be another loan? Would United insist that that loan comes with an obligation? So that's another issue there. Garnacho, we think, wants to stay in the Premier League. Chelsea are definitely interested in Garnacho, and I think Malacia will get a move somewhere. I mean, it didn't work out for him as he would have liked at PSV last season, but there should be a couple of suitors for Tyrell Malacia as well. So I'm not saying there's a confidence that United won't have these 5 players come the end of this transfer window, but I think there's a hope that they'll be able to do some sort of deals for all 5 before the window closes.
Okay. Brilliant stuff. Okay, let's take a very quick break. We've got lots still to get through. After the break, we're going to be talking about Arsenal and their chase of Viktor Gyokeres. We're also going to round up the rest of the transfer news floating around in the Premier League with Sam and Darms, so don't go anywhere. Hello, welcome back, everyone. This is the Transfer Talk podcast, your favourite podcast, of course. Arsenal, what about them? They're trying to finalise the deal to sign Sporting striker Viktor Gyokeres this week after announcing the arrival of Noni Madueke on Friday. Dharmesh, let's start with Gyokeres then. What is the latest there?
I mean, this one, Arsenal chasing a number 9 has been a saga. This has been the saga within the saga of Viktor Gyokeres, because clearly Arsenal decided, right, this is the player that we want to bring in. Clearly Viktor Gyokeres wanted to go to Arsenal and nowhere else. Finally, they came to an agreement on an initial fee after much toing and froing and much deliberation, shall we call it, with the sporting president on how much he would be demanding. And finally, with Viktor Gyokeres' representatives waiving the fee that they would get to enable this move to happen. Now, the initial deal we think is worth £55 million plus around £8.5 to £9 million in performance-related add-ons. And it was those add-ons and the conditions attached to those add-ons which was the big stumbling block in getting this deal finally done. Now, in the last 24 to 48 hours, it looks like that they are as good as agreed on those add-ons. So what Viktor Gyokeres is now waiting for is the final permission from Sporting to be able to fly to Singapore, because that's where Arsenal are at currently on their pre-season tour, to be able to fly there to finalise that deal, to take a medical, and then to be announced as an Arsenal player. They are still hopeful, I think, Arsenal, that he can play a part in this pre-season tour. As we record this, Arsenal are playing AC Milan later today, but the second match of this tour in Singapore is going to be on Sunday against Newcastle United. Might be a tad ambitious, given we don't know how much Gyokeres has been training in pre-season, but there's still a hope that Arsenal can get all of this sorted and he'll be part of that squad to play some sort of part in this pre-season tour. So that's where we're at the moment. It looks like now, finally, it's a case of when and not if Viktor Gyokeres is an Arsenal player.
Buzzing after our 4-0 defeat to Celtic the other day in pre-season. We'll maybe get Gyokeres on his first appearance in an Arsenal shirt as well on Saturday. That'd be great. Sam, Gyokeres, there's a lot. I've seen a lot of people doubting whether he has the ability to come into the Premier League and do well. We know he did well at Coventry. We know he's done brilliantly at Sporting. This is another step up.
It is, yes. We've talked probably through the last 2 windows about how you do need to take his goal tallies, his incredible goal tallies, with a pinch of salt, or maybe more than a pinch, because of the quality of the opposition that he is often playing against. But as Dharmesh is often so quick to remind me, he did also score a Champions League hat-trick against Manchester City, which should count for something. So we can't completely dismiss it all. You just have to have an understanding that some of the teams, most of the teams he's played against in the last 2 years are very poor. Some of the bottom 4 teams in Portugal are probably League One standard, and the national teams he's played against in the Nations League are not much better. So when you do see these goal-scoring numbers, you think, oh my goodness me, this is the next Erling Haaland. But when you contextualise it, it's probably not. That said, I think he'll work out just fine. Although we have to say that we're working on the understanding here. I've talked a lot about how age comes into these fees and how clubs are trying to spend the big money on the early 20s players. And part of that is because if it doesn't work out, and it may not for all of the players that we've talked about this summer, you can get something at the end of that after 2 years if you give up on the player. So if they assigned Benjamin Šeško and Šeško didn't work out, after 2 years, you're getting 40 million euros back from Roma, or he'll go back to Leipzig, or something will happen. You will get a diminished return on your investment, but you'll get something back. Gyokeres is 27. If this doesn't work out, this is a sunk cost. So this has to work. There is no option here after 2 years to get something back. So that's the concern. The concern is if it doesn't hit the ground running, if it doesn't work out straight away, this is effectively money down the drain. But I think he's more than equipped to play in the Premier League. And I think he'll score a pretty decent amount of goals, and he'll offer physicality and aggression and hard running. He's quicker than people give him credit for, and he can sustain sprints over longer distances. And he takes a hell of a penalty. Like, this guy will get to 20 goals this season, and that will be fine.
Okay, good. Well, that'll please Arsenal fans. So will your tweet within the last hour, Dharmesh, about Cristhian Mosquera. Almost done there, isn't it?
Yeah. When not if should be my little tagline. A formal announcement on this one is expected soon now. He is in Singapore, is Cristhian Mosquera, ahead of his move from Valencia. The initial fee we think is around £13 million, plus add-ons, 21 years old, central defender. I think Arsenal will be really pleased with the deal that they've got here. I'm sure Sam has been studying his form and will tell us exactly what Mosquera is going to bring. But clearly he's going to have a fight on his hands to try and get into that first team with Saliba and Gabriel, the first choice central defensive partnership. But perhaps, like a lot of the deals that Arsenal have done, not all of them, we would expect the likes of Zubamendi and Gyokeres, when he joins, to go straight into the first team. But the rest of them are just strengthening that squad, aren't they? Covering injuries and being able to rest players by bringing in more quality squad depth. So someone like Mosquera looks like a really good deal. That one should be done really, really soon. As I said, formal announcement soon. By the time some people listen to this, it could have been announced as well. He's done his medical and has agreed personal terms on a 5-year contract.
He looks like a squad player potentially. Well, not a squad player, but backup to Saliba and Gabriella, as Dharmesh says. But Arteta's been talking about sort of bulking up the squad and bringing numbers in. Where else, after Gyokeres and Mosquera, where else do you think he'll look to add?
So he's talking about how he wants numbers and depth, but Arsenal's squad it's starting to look pretty stacked. So I imagine that he's still looking for one more forward, whether that's Eze or Rodrigo or whoever it may be. Xavi Simons has also been mentioned. We'll see. And the fans are getting very excited about what that could turn out to be. Aside from that, I would say that the only hole left is there really still isn't a great deal of creativity coming from those number 8s outside of Martin Odegaard. They don't have a natural player to step in for him if they needed him to. I mean, he does technically exist. His name's Fabio Vieira, but I think his Arsenal chapter is probably closed. And so maybe that's where they want to look. Now, that is a tricky role to fill because Odegaard is very durable. He's the captain and he plays all the games. So you're asking a very good player of Arsenal standard to come in and be maybe Odegaard's deputy, which is a tough sell. It's a bit like when Spurs used to try and convince strikers to come and sit behind Harry Kane. They didn't want to do it for obvious reasons. But I'd imagine those are the positions he's looking at. One more for the forward line and possibly just a different creative option from those central midfield roles, because they've bulked out the central midfield core very well, having lost 2, they've gained 2, but they haven't addressed much in terms of final third creativity from that position. So maybe it's that.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. Arsenal still with business to do, it would seem. Just let's talk about some of the other business floating around. We touched on it last week. Granit Xhaka and this move to Sunderland, former Arsenal captain, of course. Currently by Leverkusen. We know that the clubs are in talks. We know that Xhaka has agreed personal terms. His agent has told Sky in Germany that his client only wants to join Sunderland. But Erik ten Hag is the Leverkusen boss. His quotes were interesting. He said they can't afford to let him go. They've already let too many players go. Does that scupper this deal? I mean, where are we? What do we think, guys? Sam, I'll come to you first.
Don't come to me. I think I spent most of last week going
Granit
no
Xhaka
chance.
in a Sunderland shirt?
I spent most of last week saying no chance on this. Clearly, I've got a pretty rough track record in the last week or so. Look, Xhaka wants to go, but Erik ten Hag's statement felt quite pointed. He expanding on that, he said that the club have already lost 4 important players this summer, and they would not be losing any more. Thank you very much. He was very stern on this. So this looks like a little tug of war to come, and we'll see how it goes. I am a bit surprised that Xhaka has decided at this stage of his career that what he fancies is a full-on relegation scrap. But we know he's always had a proclivity for the combative side of the game. Maybe he just wants to play in the Tyne-Wear derby. Maybe that's a bucket list item for Xhaka. Would you be surprised?
Should be for any player. Look, what we'll say is that you say relegation scrap. Sunderland have had a real go, haven't they? I mean, you're looking at all the promoted clubs there, and they're all doing business and looking to do business. We know that Burnley could still sell Trafford to Manchester City with Newcastle lurking. That's going to bring in more money, which, as we talked about with PSR rules, they can spend. Leeds have brought in players. This is a question we've asked before, but I think it's an important one as the transfer window moves forward. Looking at the business the promoted clubs are doing, guys, do you think there's a a better chance this year that we don't see what we've seen the last 2 years, which is the 3 coming up, going straight back down?
I think there's a better chance. Yes,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, me too.
The caliber of the clubs that are coming up into the Premier League, you're looking at Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland. Sunderland, to a lesser extent, to the other two. The Leeds and Burnley, of course, have got Premier League experience more recently than Sunderland. But the business that Sunderland are doing, I think quite a lot of people, Sam included, I mean, he's raised a few eyebrows about the potential Xhaka deal, but they've spent quite a bit of money, have Sunderland, and they really are going for it. So I think there is a better chance. And coupled with the fact that if you look at the league last season, and aside of the 3 that went down, the clubs in that bottom half, you would expect Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur, of course, to be a lot better this season with investment. But a lot of the other teams, had they improved enough? I know we still got a few weeks left in this transfer window to not be involved in it again. Maybe these clubs that are coming up are thinking there is an opportunity here, because some of these clubs are not as strong as they used to be. And maybe there's an opportunity to get points. Maybe there's an opportunity to get into that magic 17th position. I'm going to stick my head out here. Here we go.
Yes.
The 3 promoted clubs will not all go down.
Nice.
Massive, that, isn't it?
I agree.
Which one or two?
No,
or
no,
three
I'm just that's where I'm finishing, Sam.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can take that on if you like. I've made a bold statement there.
Well, based on the last 2 seasons, you actually have. So, look, I think there's a couple of things here, and Dharmesh has touched on one, which is the already established teams, the top 17. There's a couple in there that you're looking at and thinking, could we ever go at them? So, Dharmesh, you didn't name any names, but I will. I mean, the 3 promoted clubs should be looking at Brentford right now, having lost their manager, their captain, their best player, potentially Johan Wissa, and appointed a complete unknown quantity outside of the G-Tech Stadium as a manager in Keith Andrews, and wondering, are they there to be had? And teams should also be looking at Wolves and saying they have just lost 2 phenomenal footballers in Ryan Aït-Nouri and Matheus Cunha. And yes, they're going to spend some money to try and replace that quality, but are they going to be able to replace them like for like? Probably not. Are they there to be had? So first of all, you need the opportunity. And then second, you need the actual intent to take that opportunity. And this is what I'll say. Last 2 seasons, there have been some clubs that have come up, and I don't think their heart has been remotely in it to even stay in the league. I think when Sheffield United came up, they were in a ownership crisis. That summer they sold basically their best player in Iliman Ndiaye over to Marseille. That's a white flag if I've ever seen it. And there have been some comments from the Southampton owners in the last couple of months to suggest that they didn't really have a lot of confidence from the top down that they could actually spend enough money to stay in the league last season. And so it proved. I'm not getting this message from Sunderland. I'm not getting this message from Leeds. Their moves tell me that they sense an opportunity and they are open to trying to take it. And I think Leeds have put together a squad that is going to be very horrible to play against, if nothing else. Have you seen the size of the fellas they're signing? It's going to be like 11 6'4" men walking out onto that pitch at Ellen Road. They're going to make it absolutely horrible for some of these Premier League teams. And that might just be enough. You never know.
I agree with both of you. I think it's good. We're going to buck the trend this year, and at least one of those 3 will stay up. Right, let's just quickly rattle through some more names, guys, before we finish. Thomas Muller, legend of the game, decided he's not going to retire, and he plans to continue his career in the MLS there. That's according to our colleagues in Germany. 35-year-old left Bayern Munich at the end of last season as a free agent, bringing an end to his 25-year illustrious association with the German Giants. So Sky Germany reporting that LAFC are one of the 2 clubs in the race to sign him. Good move, Sam. MLS, Muller. I'd probably do the same in his shoes.
What? Yeah, if you ask me if I wanted to move to LA, the answer is yes. Why not? Why not? LAFC, look, they're quite a well put together team. They've got some good players, and Thomas Muller at this point. I mean, there was a conversation happening 2 weeks ago among Bayern fans. Should we be letting him go? Because Jamal Musiala's very unfortunate but serious injury at the Club World Cup has put Bayern under a bit of pressure in that position, probably pressure they didn't expect to be in. And so there was a conversation quickly about whether or not it was the right time to let Thomas Muller go, at least for another 6 months. LAFC, yeah, I mean, why not? Why not? It'd be brilliant. And to anyone that signs him, you'll get an amazing character. I've had the fortune of sitting down and interviewing him, and he's completely and utterly bonkers. He is so much fun. So whoever gets him, great stuff. You've got your social media sorted for a year.
Brilliant. And you know what? I'm not surprised at all that you've sat down with Thomas Muller, Sam, because I see you both as quite similar characters, actually, to be honest. But that was a wonderful chat.
Sorry, just
moving
quickly,
on to some of the other stuff.
To qualify the madness, he sat there and he did an impression of a horse right into my face. It was an interesting 10 minutes.
Yeah. I bet you could do a good one back, mate. You know.
You're not tempting me on that.
Looking at other things happening elsewhere, RB Leipzig pursuing a move for Chelsea midfielder Carney Chukwuemeka. That's according to Sky in Germany. He spent the second half of last season on loan at Borussia Dortmund. But SSN also reporting that Chelsea are looking at Leipzig's attacking midfielder Xavi Simons. He's been linked with a lot of clubs, actually, Sam. Bayern Munich thought to be interested in him, as well as been other Premier League clubs mentioned. Can you see why he's in demand?
Yeah, I can, as particularly for Bayern again this summer. It's reared up again, probably as a result of that Musiala injury that we mentioned. He's had a funny career, Simons. He's been around for absolutely ages because he broke through so early, floating around Barcelona and PSG academies, ending up at great loans at PSV, into Leipzig. I've struggled to keep track of exactly who he plays for. Through or where he plays on the pitch for most of his career, because he's played on the wing, he's played as an 8, he's played as a 10, he's played as a false 9 at academy level. I've seen that. So he's a very interesting player who's been around for a long time, but feels like he's still got so many more levels to go. And if anyone buys him, I have to accept that right now he's a bit rough around the edges. He does have a habit of making the wrong decision in the final third quite a lot, I've found. So he shoots when he should have passed and vice versa. It can be quite annoying. But you look at that and you just think it's so much coachable putty there that he could still become a bit of a star. So I don't know what Chelsea would do with him, Pete, but don't we say that about all their players these days? But you can't fault the talent ID here. He's clearly very, very good.
Coachable putty. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that is.
That's a classic. That's a Sam Tighe classic. Let's just move on to a couple of outgoings at Brighton. I wonder how Brighton fans are feeling about their business, but Evan Ferguson, a player with a lot of potential, Dharmesh, heading off to Roma.
It's incredible how this one has worked out, isn't it? Not so long ago, he was the next big thing. They were comparing him to Alan Shearer, to Harry Kane. Yeah. I genuinely thought it was going to work out for him last season at West Ham United, playing under Graham Potter, the man who'd given him his debut. Clearly didn't work out for him there. Now he's got this move to Roma. I just really hope it works out for him. I really do, because I think he has got so much potential. Fantastic when he's at his absolute pomp, but just hasn't worked for him. I mean, I think it's a loan deal, but there is an option for Roma to buy him for around 34 million. So if that option is exercised, then it's gone well for Evan Ferguson. If not, then he starts again. Where can he go then? So I'm not saying, this is it for him or whatever, but because he's still really, really young, but he just needs that run of games now, stay injury free and just get scoring again.
What about Estupinan? He's on his way as well from Brighton.
Yes, so looks like he's going to Milan. And you know what? It doesn't look like a ton of money for a player of Estupinan's quality. £17.5 million or so, 20 million euros. I think this is a bit of a bargain. The left-back market is typically quite tough. And they had a really strange situation, Milan, earlier in the window, where they had basically a deal agreed for Archie Brown. And at the very last minute, he changed his mind and went to Turkey, and then did a social media post for Fenerbahce. Basically, him on the plane, on the private plane, asking the pilot to change direction because he changed his mind at the last minute. That's how close it was. Very frustrating if you're AC Milan. They've ended up with a backup option of Estupinan. I think Estupinan's really good. So in the left-back market, as I said, you've looked at a lot of players here transferring for 30, 40 million pounds. You know, you've got Milos Kerkez has gone, Ike Nuri's gone, Alvaro Carreras has gone to Real Madrid. Can be a pretty tricky space, and this looks cheap.
Okay, fair enough. Just finish off with Fulham, guys, because we're out of time. A couple of incomings there. Well, Benjamin Lecomte, the goalkeeper, is coming in from Montpellier. And Reiss Nelson. What's happening with that one, Dharms? The potential that they could sign the Arsenal forward?
Yeah, re-sign him, because he was on a season-long loan last season, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Cut short, though, wasn't it, in December with that serious hamstring injury. So didn't play again for the rest of that season. Clearly, Marco Silva and the recruitment team have seen enough, because they remain in talks with Arsenal over trying to do another loan deal. I think Arsenal this time will want some sort of permanent option or obligation attached to that deal, because he's now entered the final 2 years of his contract at Arsenal. He's currently training with Arsenal. He's out there in Singapore for the club's pre-season tour while these talks continue. So you would expect once there is that final breakthrough, he'll be allowed to fly back and finalise that deal. But I think there is a cautious optimism on all sides here that maybe they can get this one done.
Okay, good stuff. Well, that's hopefully a good move for him. He's a good player, Reiss Nelson. I like him, and I think Fulham a good fit there for him. So good luck to him there. Guys, we're out of time. There was so much more we could have talked about. There's lots going on. So if we haven't mentioned your club or a signing you wanted us to discuss, please get in touch with us. We'll try our best to get to them in the next episode. But we really have packed this hour out. So Sam, Doms, thank you so much to you guys. Always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you next week. Although we've got to talk to you about that, because I think I'm off to see Oasis next week, guys. So yeah. So we'll have to work out when we can see each other. But say again, Sam.
I said, can I come? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I'll try and bring you along, mate. Yeah. No problem. I'll do my best. So yeah.
We'll ask Pete, can you make the podcast next week? And Pete said, well, maybe.
Very good.
Thanks,
Look forward to seeing you at
it.
some point next week. Anyway, lads, come on the Lionesses on Sunday in the final of the Euros, whether it be Spain or Germany.
Germany.
I think we all hope it's Germany, don't we? I think. But yeah, come on, England. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. But big thanks to Matty and to Jesse and John and everyone behind the scenes over at Sky Sports News for putting this together. And the biggest thanks of all, as always, goes to you guys for listening. So wherever you have listened to this podcast, whether you've been in your car, or on the train, in the wind or in the rain, in your house or in your shed, or on the couch or in your bed, on the hills or in the valleys, in the streets or in the alleys, out for a run, or maybe on a walk. Thanks for listening to Transfer Talk.
And that's for sure.